Hi everyone, this is what I've been working on for the last like 3 months. There's three super squishy, very embroidered and beaded journals. Yeah, if you've been following me on Facebook and Instagram, you would have seen a lot of the progress photos of the covers and the insides. They're really squishy and super satisfying. They're all slow stitched except this one. This one did see a little bit of a sewing machine, so I sewed these on a piece of cotton, and then I slow stitch all of these components on. These have not seen a sewing machine. Everything that's on here is all stitched by hand. So we'll do this one first. So it's tied with some vintage, I think it's seam binding. It's really pretty. It's got these little lines going through it that are stitched in. This is the closure. It's just that seam, and it comes with this really cute little charm. So the cover looks like this. There's beads and buttons and sequins and little rosebuds that have all been embroidered by me. This is some antique trim, some vintage ribbon through. There's so much. It's really satisfying to touch all these tiny little beads and the French knots. So I basically found my base, which is this really pretty fabric, and then I patched over a lot of different pieces of vintage cotton, and then I put on some lace and other bits, some vintage appliques. This is antique here, and then I just went ham with the embroidery. I kind of kept going until I was happy with it, and then I did a running stitch all along here. Oh my gosh, it's so satisfying, so satisfying. Yeah, really nice. So it measures, I can't remember, but I think it's about 10 inches by 8 inches, and it's got a 2-inch spine. I can't remember how many pages are in this one, but it's all in the description, and it's also in my Etsy shop description. So there's a lot here. This is the inside. I didn't want to cover this because I thought it was a really pretty woven fabric that I found at an antique store. So the inside comes with this antique postcard and a vintage letter with the envelope with the original letter inside. That just gets clipped in there. There's the front. So this is really special. My mum actually made this. My mum went into this little frenzy and she made like a million pieces of ephemera, and I've decided to add a few of her pieces. So this is like heaps of writing space. There's a piece of an old letter, and this is my little reference, but there's a pocket in here and also one in there. This is a vintage piece of an envelope that kind of tore off, and so I wanted to use it. It's ruffles, and there's a pocket in there, and a playing card that belongs somewhere. Yeah, some really pretty old lace with embroidery on it. So there's heaps of space for you to write. It's filled with vintage papers. This is antique French script that came from a play, and it was like a play manuscript thing that I just tore that apart. Ruffles, some stamps, some vintage wallpaper. Oh, it's so pretty. So pretty. Also comes with this onion skin vintage typewritten piece. Some French, like, I don't know what they use this for, whether they use this for embroidery, but it's like a stencil thing, which was really pretty. Some scrapbook paper. And this is genuine. There's a vintage playing card, and goes into this little pocket. Oh yeah, and I did a lot of fabric collage. I kind of wanted this to be a mix of fabric and paper, so I kind of stitched. The hand stitching took me a million years, so I didn't hand stitch these in. This fabric collage is done by machine. Some graph. This is an old book page with some nice ruffle. Oh yeah, I kind of had to reinforce some of the paper pages because they did like split down the middle when I folded them in half. That's antique. Comes with a vintage postcard, and I rusted this paperclip myself. Another playing card with a pocket in there. This is one of the envelopes that my mum made. There's nothing in there, but you can put something in there. Scrapbooking paper. This came as a set. It was like a full sheet, and you were supposed to turn this into a little box, but I kind of liked all the individual photos, so you can back that and write on it. A vintage doily. Another handmade piece by my mum with some little... This is a genuine French bond, and this is some fake vintage ephemera. Book pages. There's another tuck spot there. Pocket in here. Heaps of writing space. Another collage. Well, no, I wouldn't really say this is a collage. It's like 3 pieces of fabric put together. Some vintage ledger. Scrapbook paper with a bit of ruffles. This is a genuine cigarette card. So there's a little tiny pocket in here. And a handmade bookmark. That is not made by me. That's old. Some more genuine paper, some script. Oh yeah, I also got into this phase a couple of years ago of dyeing with every single piece of tea that I could find. My mum went to America and found 1,000 different bags of tea. So I went through and I used them all to dye everything. Oh yeah, okay, this is cool. This was a total accident, but it kind of went pink because of a piece of pomegranate, I think, that was in the tea. Another pocket. Vintage wallpaper. A vintage greeting card. It's empty, but it's really cute, and I thought it matched the colour scheme. This is an antique letter. Oh, the script on this is so pretty. More collaging, and then we get to the other side. This is a laminated dried flowers. My mum also made this. And a nice little piece here. This came out of a children's book page. I really liked the colouring, and I thought it suited really well. So that has its home in here. Another pocket tuck thing. Some more ledger, collaging. These were super grungy. They were like coffee dyed 57 times, and then I put it in the oven, and then it kind of cooked it funny, but it looks really cool. A wallpaper pocket. Another pocket here. This is scrapbooking paper. Tea-dyed paper with a pocket. The back of that antique lace. Some more graph and more collaging. There's heaps of space to write on. And then my mum, these are index cards with some transfer on them, so that's some nice space for you to write on. My mum made that. This is a genuine vintage cover that I put here as a pocket, and then here is the back, and in there's a couple of pieces of handmade tags and journaling cards. Actually, they're just journaling cards. And then this really pretty, I think this came off a sleeve, but it's vintage, and I chopped some of it. And then here's the back. So that's the first one. The second one. So this one measures about 6 inches by 10 or 12 inches. That ribbon. This one took me a million years. So there's rosebuds and like bullion stitches, whatever. There's sequins, and then this really satisfying like slanted stitch that I did. There's the French knots and a vine, and I slow stitched this really pretty piece of fabric onto the back to kind of match the front. Comes with the little key charm, and then a pleat, and these vines took so long. Yeah, so that's some vintage trim and velvet. Yeah, it's really pretty. These took me so many years. Anyway, so the inside, I kind of did like a layering of that sleeve, and this is some vintage cotton lace, some pink broderie. This looks white in the camera, but it's actually pink. So that is actually a little pocket. And in that pocket lives an antique postcard. So pretty. They just don't make them. And this is super embossed. Really pretty. And then another one of those journaling space fake envelope things that my mum made. She made a few of them. They're really, really pretty also. And there is a pocket here. Some scrapbook paper with a ruffle. This is a calling card. And a playing card, and this is a pocket in here. Another pocket there, scrapbook paper and some vintage fabric collage. Little pocket with a tiny piece, some writing space. This is an envelope, and in that envelope there's like all of these stamps that you can collage and play with. I think there's 5 or 6 stamps in there, so yeah, that goes in there with this really tiny paper clip. It's really cute. Another fabric pocket. Some, this is an antique doily. This was another one of those box things that I chopped up. And here we have some vintage wallpaper samplers that I thought would be fun for you, for the recipient of this journal to use. And some pretty script. Another one of those transfer index cards that my mum made. And a tiny little pocket with a patience playing card and some little faux tickets. That is a little... Oh no, it's not. Never mind. That comes from an antique book with some collaging and a ruffle. My mum made this little double pocket thing. And I got a few books, and some of them had someone's notes on there. So this is from, I think, a Shakespeare play or something. But I really like when people write on there. I really like seeing all the different scripts that people have. Pocket, some ledger, and more scrapbooking paper. Okay, so this I really liked. So this is part of my antique French lace collection. But I thought it'd be really fun to stitch some of these in. And you can actually take these out and then use them in whatever other project. So they're just hand stitched in like so. And yeah, so they can just come out. And this is on a vintage hanky. Botanical book pages with some ruffles. Another pocket. And yeah, these double pocket things became a bit of a thing in this collection. Another one with a vintage cigarette card. It's really pretty embroidered cotton. Another pocket and a ruffle. Some more vintage. Some of these are antique and tea-dyed pages and script. So heaps for you to write on. A cover. What is that? 1930. So that's vintage. Heaps more space for you to write in. So I made these kind of full but kind of not. They're thick because of the million pages that are in there, and the fabric made it really thick. So now more scrapbooking paper. I haven't used any printables in this. It's all either scrapbooking paper or genuine ephemera. This is a little like trifold thing that my mum also made. It comes with little bits and pieces for you to explore. These trims came from boho tree, and I thought it looked really pretty there. There's a pocket in there. This is a transfer on some cotton. This cotton I actually used as the base of all my collaging. Botanical trim. Same deal goes here. So these are some of my boho tree pieces that I also just slow stitched nice and loosely onto the vintage hanky. So you can actually take these out. If you snip one side, I thought this looked really cool. If you snip one side, you can actually take out everything. Scrapbooking paper, another piece of vintage wallpaper pocket. That is also a pocket in here. Some script. This is an antique 1700s inside book cover thing with the really pretty marbling. I only have a few of those, but I have chopped them up to use in here. This is a little side pocket thing with a handmade piece. Another couple of pockets and ruffles. Some pieces for you to play around with some collaging. Another pocket. More fabric collage. And then a vintage bookmark. And then this is another pocket and the back. And then the smallest one. So this one measures about 5.5 by 6 inches with a 2-inch spine. Oh my goodness gracious, so much. This is some vintage French ledger. That is vintage English measuring tape. We've got some labels, buttons, some antique French lace here and here. So much. And the super satisfying running stitch. So this was originally a piece of quilt that I collaged over. Also comes with the little charm, a trade card. This is antique, and a letter, one of those transfers, so they'll go on there. A antique cabinet card on a really pretty stamp. So there's botanical book pages, some antique French script, some little pretty pieces for you to use in this little pocket. More collaging. I really liked putting this page together. This was really fun. And that is some vintage French ticking. There's heaps of tiny pieces in here. More collage work. That is a vintage like receipt thing. This came out of a book, like an inscription to somebody. A little pocket in here. More collage. Another pretty piece here. The aging on here on these things is so beautiful. With a stamp. That's the back of an antique envelope that kind of fell off the front. And a piece of ephemera there. That's all genuine. One of these really pretty cards. I don't know what they are, but they have these birds on them, and found a whole book of them at a garage sale. There's a little pocket in there with a playing card. So that's the pocket. Some collage, a calling card, an antique calling card with a vintage Morse code alphabet thingy, a wallpaper scrap in that little pocket, some ruffling and a stamp, more collaging. It's another one of these trade cards, sorry. And that's in a envelope pocket, genuine envelope. So heaps. Oh, this is vintage French ledger. Really like it, love it. Another piece of wallpaper and a cigarette card, some scrapbooking paper, and a vintage swap card. And then here you have what is that? It's a photograph. Oh, this is really cute. A little pocket in there. Heaps of different types of paper. Another one of those laminated dry botanicals that my mum made. And I really liked how that sat on here. Little piece in there. This is a antique envelope. Actually, that's the envelope that came out of. There's a little pocket in there with a little piece of handmade that my mum made. This is a little inside thing for you to tuck things into, and it's held in with this clip that I rusted myself. Some collaging, heaps of different kinds of script, little bits in here for you to play with. There's a pocket there and an envelope, some more script, a pocket, tiny little pocket here with this little fairy, which I thought was really cute. More collaging. So this journal is really thick, super squishy. Some graph, some more fabric collage. Oh, I really like this page. I tore apart heaps of different vintage and antique script, some French, some, I don't know what that is, but it's not, oh, that's French. That actually came from France. That is Polish, and I'm pretty sure that just came from the US, but I shoved that all over some of that antique marbling. Antique invoices, collaging. That's some antique paper. It's super faded, but I thought it was really pretty. And then there's the back of that collage. And that is the back. And in the back there is a little lace sample card that my mum made. And again, the running stitch. So these are now in my Etsy shop. I'll leave a link in the description box. But yeah, I'm really happy with how these turned out. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a like. It will help others to see it and to enjoy all this squish. Thanks.